That was
Howdy
a long
ho.
one.
Yeah.
People in Bourbon
It was
Lane.
well, when I told Kenny I had a solid 10 minutes to get on the roundtable, I didn't know he was going to use 9.5 on the intro music. So.
And so I just put in the comments. I was like has 10. We just took 4 away.
Is part of the strategy. Get rid of all your dumb answers now.
Danielle has that
Microphone
timer
issues.
ticking right now.
I came in strong. Microphone was on point. Here we go.
You are
This is
the
the
best
best
dressed
audio.
one.
Yeah, this is the best audio you've had in months, too.
You got a variety of stripes going on that shirt.
You know, I like to keep people guessing what size stripes are on my shirt. You know.
Well, good deal. So, all right, we got 3.5 minutes to finish this roundtable so Blake can get back to his regularly scheduled programming.
We're good. Bottle of Silver Oak has been opened, so yeah, we got time.
Oh, good deal. So we can just go ahead and, we'll just pad the time. I'm sure Danielle won't care.
Yeah, 100%. Just she's good with anything that I do bourbon related. So
yeah,
The last anniversary trip.
yeah.
That's what it's well, I don't know about you all, but it's like at some point this bourbon thing has to start making money, or my wife's just going to start really getting pissed.
That's hilarious.
Blake is
Blake is a UPC code.
Yeah, I just saw that, too.
That's pretty
Blake
good.
Hold on, why is the
with the matching tattoo?
What'd they say? Blake is a UPC code.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
That's pretty funny. That's good.
All right, how y'all feeling?
Great. Sunday.
It's a good night.
All right,
Crazy.
then. I guess we'll get to it. I'm a little tired still. Is there an echo?
Yeah, like
No, hold on. That's
Private
me.
Blake.
Sorry.
There we go,
trying to do
Blake.
I'm trying to do the pop-out chat, but it doesn't want to let me. So
It's okay. We'll give you a second to figure it out.
We'll get there. All right. Now I'm hearing myself. Never mind. Okay. I don't need outside chats. We're good.
Okay. If there's anything good, I will put.
If there's anything really good,
We'll
put it
copy and
on
paste
there.
it over.
Yeah. If as we're going through here, if anybody has any more good riffs on Blake's shirt, please put them in the comments, and we will make sure that we will put them in the chat.
Yeah. UPC
Gotta hit him
code's gonna
now.
be tough to beat.
Yeah, UPC code starts out
It's gonna
strong.
be I'm not even gonna
All
show
right.
you my pants.
Next
my wife
single
was
barrel
like, "Are you
sticker.
wearing yoga pants? Are you like okay?"
You got yoga pants on? Give us a
Did-
little, come on, give us a little turn.
It was a fashion show.
Like, did the washing machine shrink them a little bit? Yes. Have I gained a little weight? Yes. It's a
It's a whole new
dangerous,
saying to your, a whole new
yeah.
meaning for your tight end story that you've got.
that's
I
funny.
get it. Maybe he has been working out. Who knows?
Who knows? You
All
never
right.
know.
Y'all ready to get at it then?
Just roll.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
There we go. Welcome back, everybody. It's Bourbon Community Round. I have to start that over.
When did you do the clap? Is that new?
It's
He's
just to
always done that.
yeah,
Yeah.
psych myself
I've
up.
never
Gotta
seen
sync the audio.
clap.
Yeah.
I've never seen the clap in my entire life.
Yeah,
Your
it's
your
supposed
audio
to-
hasn't worked before.
Yeah, you haven't been there for the past like 30 words.
Just
We
make
had
this
to
episode of Blake roast.
5-second delay.
looking like the
All right.
Doppler effect.
All right, let's go. Let's go.
Welcome back, everybody. It is Bourbon Community Roundtable number 80, and we've got everybody here with a few good topics on deck for us tonight. But when I said, pretty much everybody here, but yeah, the whole Bourbon Pursuit team's here. So Ryan and
Hey.
Fred, fellas, welcome back. I mean, not welcome back. Well, I mean, it's your show, so it's not really welcome back. Like you're still a part of this.
Welcome home, I guess.
Well,
maybe.
yeah, it's like, did you wipe your feet off at the front door before you stepped in?
Always.
I'm not
Glad
one
to
of those
be
people.
here.
Like I don't know about you all. Like I don't care if you wear shoes in my house or one of those people. It's like you'd make the guests take off their shoes when they come in.
Hell no.
I mean, in my house, I'm lucky if my kid doesn't hide my shoes, or the new dog takes it outside to chew on. So I'm just happy if I can even find my shoes anymore. So
Well, and nobody comes see me at my house. So No one cares.
Has
about
anybody ever had that though, where you like show up and like, well, will you take your shoes off and
Oh,
you're not
yeah.
wearing socks, and then you're like, now I'm just walking around a stranger's house barefoot.
You haven't trimmed your toenails in a while.
Yeah, that's I've been to places where like, yeah, please take your shoes off. One of my army buddies was like major crazy about this, and I was just like, man, I know the people you slept with, and you're afraid of people coming in with your with shoes on. I mean, bruh.
As soon as they say that, I'm like, well, see you later.
Must be a lot of fun in this house. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do a quick round of introduction. So you heard Blake already. So Blake, get at it.
Yeah, I'm Blake from Sealbox and Bourboner. So, keeping the streak alive. Always fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
And it's not even Reber anymore. It's Riebkin. Is that what you want to go by?
Yeah, the Cal Ripken of the Bourbon Roundtable should live on. So just wanted to, make sure everybody. I'm sacrificing anniversary dinners tonight. So I told my wife I was just going to the restroom. 30 minutes later, I'll join her back for dinner, and we'll see what happens.
I was really backed up, honey.
I thought it was gonna be like a Mrs. Doubtfire thing. He's have to come out with like a whole wardrobe get up change and something like that. All right, Brian.
All right, thanks, guys. Number 80 here. Happy to be here, and Brian with Sipping Corn and Bourbon Justice, and I'm just in awe of Blake. I mean, he doesn't need me to say that. We don't need to get his ego stroked anymore, but man, anniversary night, and he's on the round table. That should tell everybody watching what this means to us.
Just get your scanner out.
Yeah, I don't know if people caught on that one. He's wearing a UPC code as
That's
a
true.
graphic
Yeah, we're
t-shirt.
recording a podcast.
This
So
is a
Gonna have
very
to keep
nice
one
shirt.
going
Yeah.
for the chat.
people
This
can't
is
see
very
his
nice
multiple
shirt.
striped shirt.
All right, Nick.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. It's been a little while since I've been on one of these, so good to see everybody again. Nick with Breaking Bourbon, breakingbourbon.com.
Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get into it. People were trying to keep it together, so there's a lot of good sort of riffs that are coming in the chat just to Blake's shirt, but Blake knows it's all in good fun, so we'll try to keep his zebra printing this happy fun here tonight. So
Unfortunately, my wife is also making fun of the shirt, so I'm pretty self-conscious about this thing right now. But I like it. I'm sticking with it.
yeah,
I'm
Eric says don't
invested.
go around any prisons. They're going to think you escaped.
Hey, and he is from Florida, so we all. If you haven't seen the Netflix series on Florida Man, there's a little, little apropos there.
There you go.
Hey guys, we have some great roundtable topics I'd like to get into tonight.
So we've been talking about Blake's shirt for 13 minutes.
It's a brain down there.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's get into it. So this first one was, I kind of saw this in a VinePair article. So this was a recent one that came out. It was by Dylan Ettinger, and it was titled, "Are Single Rickhouse Bottlings the Next Big Thing in Bourbon?" And that kind of got me thinking of really, do we see this trend going anywhere? In the article, it talked, of course, about Russell's Reserve Camp Nelson Seat. I think that was really the one that kind of really shined a light on this, as like this could potentially be a next big thing, because that really premiumized the whole category. But of course, also one of the primary examples that we've had for a long time, of course, is Blanton's. It all comes from the same exact warehouse. And I think we've also seen some other things hit the TTB recently. I know there's been some stuff with Four Roses that be talking about certain warehouses and certain recipes that will be coming out. Plus, for the longest time, we've always seen people that are warehouse chasers out there, whether they're getting Russell's Reserve from a certain Rickhouse, whether it's the old days of the warehouse ME chasers from Four Roses. And of course, we always think of Deatsville when it comes to Heaven Hill. So I kind of want to ask the first question here is, do we really think there's a theory to this where warehouses are creating a different flavor profile, so much different than any other thing that's out there? Or do you think it's just specific cherry barrels that are taken from different warehouses that then we put next to each other and we go, wow, these are really different? Or do you think if we did it blind and just put barrels from different places, and it'd be really kind of hard to tell a difference?
So let me kind of jump in here and just try to explain why this is so good for American whiskey. In wine, they have so much transparency, so much. You know if it's left bank, right bank, Bordeaux. You know if it Napa Valley, which side of the hill it's on. Winemakers tell you everything about the fermentation process, the aging. With the exception of a few brands like Silver Oak, which is more more spirits like in its marketing. We have not had transparency at that level in American whiskey ever. It's only been in the last, I want to say 5, maybe 10 years that we've started getting distillers to share, open up what's going on. And when someone gets a bottle of bourbon and they see that when they hear that it's cask strength and it's under 90 proof, they don't actually know that what warehouse that came from, and they think that it's BS. But there are actual cask strength products out there that go lower in proof because of the warehouse. So if this single Rickhouse ploy is actually real and people are going to go through it, it actually means something, whereas small batch doesn't mean anything. You have someone you can keep their toe to the line on a single Rickhouse because that's a truth in advertising that you can be, that can be pulled out. With small batch, that can be anything. It could be 1,000 barrels and they can still call it small batch. With a single Rickhouse, we may actually be able to taste the differences between different Rickhouses at one facility. And sure, honey barrels, absolutely. Cherry barrel spots, that's absolutely real. But so is the differences of flavor profiles between the Rickhouses. And I just look at this as another step toward incredible transparency. And the irony to me is that it's really Wild Turkey who they still don't even disclose their mash bill. I mean, you can look it up and find it, and you can look at my book or wherever you can find it, but they don't disclose that. And to me, it's a little ironic that Buffalo Trace, is all about like a single warehouse, and Wild Turkey is all about a single warehouse. And those are two of the least transparent when it comes to their grain bills. So there's some irony there, but I think this is an incredible step toward transparency in American whiskey. Everything comes off as a marketing ploy. And I understand when people go down that route, but this is very exciting for me. And I've said that as much as when I've done reviews on the Rickhouse product from Wild Turkey.
No, I think I don't know. Like I'm kind of going back and forth on it. Blake, go ahead. I see you wanted to jump in there.
Yeah. So, I mean, not to just kind of double up on what Fred said, but I think it's the closest thing we have to take these massive, in general, they're manufacturing plants for alcohol. So they're making bourbon at huge, vast quantities. And it's the most logical way we have to like make it a little more boutique and craft and kind of play on what the wine world has done with their different regions and plots of land. And it just makes incredible sense to me to see a single warehouse, and it truly does have some backing to it. Like each warehouse can be different. So while we love single barrels at times, like it could be anything from that oak, from the temperatures that year, whatever it is. There's so many variables at play. But to take an entire warehouse and say, all right, we had 30, 40 barrels from this warehouse blended together, that's a true representation of what that warehouse is. And so I think that's by far the best way I've seen for the bigger producers to kind of make it a little more unique and fun, and just that boutique offering that we all kind of want, but at the scale that they're producing. So yeah, I think that's an incredible thing, but we'll see who, it's all like with Blanton's being single barrel, then everybody else caught on with that. It'll be interesting to see if other brands also jump onto the single Rickhouse name and definition.
Yeah, I think more people are going to jump onto it. The reason that I'm so hesitant about this is because I look at this as just another angle from marketing. Now, as a whiskey geek, I think like I said, the deatsville is a great thing because we'll go into a single barrel for Elijah Craig, and you pull it out and you're like, that's Deatsville. And you're like, I want this one. It's so good. And it's like, okay, now if I would have dumped 100 barrels from Deatsville and dumped 100 barrels from, Warehouse I or whatever, it is on Heaven Hills campus, and I put them in a bottle. I mean, how big is that difference going to be to be able to see between those two? I don't know if there's going to be that much, because you can pick a lot of cherry barrels in a particular warehouse, bottle it up, and then you say this is that Rickhouse flavor. Or am I just going to see, like, I'm just going to go ahead and take, I don't know, 20 barrels from each floor, put them together. There we go. That's the flavor profile of this. Is there really going to be that much of a difference between all the different warehouses? That's where I kind of come in to try to figure out, are they picking and choosing barrels to try and develop a flavor profile for a warehouse, or is it really that much different based on the warehouse? And this is me being a little naive, because I don't have my own warehouse I can go to and figure this out. And so I'm just kind of asking the hard question and playing devil's advocate here.
So do you guys think that all of Deatsville is always better? I mean, because when we get those barrels, I'm with you. If we figure out something, we think something might be a Deatsville, and then we guess right, we're like, yeah, we got the best barrel ever. But that's passing through a panel to get to that private selection. So it's something that they have already identified as something that should go to the private barrels. So same with Four Roses, back with the ME stuff. They were just having a really nice run out of ME, but that passes through a panel. So I don't even think on private barrels we're getting a true representation of a warehouse, let alone a full campus, when we say we love Deatsville, which I say all the time.
I think, just to kind of add an kind of commentary to the whole perspective of this, it's interesting that with bourbon, we went from historically wanting a very consistent product. I mean, think of Maker's Mark, rotating barrels, Four Roses, how they, their floors don't go that high. We've been consistent. And now everything we're seeing that's really picking up, that's gained a lot of speed, single barrels, it's different, it's unique, it's inconsistent. Now we're finding another inconsistency. And I think we're going to see a lot of different angles that are taken on this. But again, just the overall perspective of, it's interesting that inconsistency is what's playing into marketing with the whole concept.
That's a nice point.
Yeah, it's great point, Nick. It's fascinating, because like you have these legacy distilleries that have like their whole pitch is like, oh, it's all in this distilling and crafting your own and making it. It's a romantic. We make our own whiskey. We don't source and blah blah blah. And now they're saying, no, it's all about the different warehouses and aging and this and that. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. You told me it was all about the distilling, and now it's about where it's at in a warehouse that makes all the difference, which is true. They say 70 to 80% of the flavor comes from the barrel and the aging and whatnot. But this is, to me, it's 100% marketing. I think, as we'll get into a later topic, I think, people were doing single barrels because they were kind of tired of the limited releases. So single barrels were the next unicorn. That kind of has gotten played out, and they're like, okay, what's next? And, they kind of like listened to what whiskey geeks were doing. They're like, oh, they're looking for, specific warehouses and this and that of single barrels. That's the next wave. We can kind of like pull, their attention and try to get that, something more, another thing that they can chase after. Cause, I don't know. I've been in warehouses and tasted barrels side by side, and there's some that are magical, some it's not great, and then some that are okay, and it doesn't matter which warehouse it is. It's just, there's so many variables that it's like Kenny said. I think it's just, yeah, you might, like, for instance, Willett's, one of their warehouses. There is, if you get on those top 2 or 3 floors, I mean, there's usually some really good barrels. It gets hit by this angle of the sun. It's very windy up there, and it does something magical to those barrels. But for the most part, everywhere else, I think, it just, there's so many variables in bourbon. That's why I keep saying for years that it's the perfect product, because you can literally pick one thing out of the 100 variables to market on. That's the fascinating thing about it.
Ryan, you bring up a couple of really good points. One, I don't think this is all about marketing. I think it's very important to point out that this was they're pursuing this because consumers have because Brian's been requesting Deatsville. I shit you not, man. They listen. I mean, for once they're listening. And Nick's point, it was all about consistency. Fellas, it wasn't until the early 2000s that you saw them having a cast strength product, regularly. In the 80s, it was Noah's Mill and Booker's, and they would have to apologize to American consumers because of its high proof. They started listening to consumers who were requesting it and wanting it and following that. So, I mean, I think just going simply to the single warehouse, they're listening to customers on this and people wanting it. And it's a subject that we're going to approach soon, like you said. But the single barrel stuff, everybody kind of wanted their own product, their own experience. And I think that there's going to be people who are drawn to the branding of a certain warehouses, whereas some people ain't going to know anything about them. And then like Brown Foreman, they're not going to care to market their warehouses because they're heat cycling. There's some differentiation there, but they're going to market their heat cycling. So everyone's going to market their story that works really well. Like, for example, if you talk to Four Roses, their yeast strains, are probably more impactful than the warehouse, not the barrel, but the warehouse with their single story warehouses. They'll probably say our yeast strains, create more flavor than an individual warehouse. So I think everybody's different. And I don't think everybody can pull off a single Rickhouse. I think there's just a handful of distilleries that can, and that's exciting. It should be celebrated. But once you start seeing, someone over market it and not really have a true warehouse that should be marketed, then that's when it's jumped the shark. So it could be a fad, it could be a trend. I just hope it's real and I hope it stays because I love being able to analyze variables from one thing to another.
I think
it creates a. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kenny.
No, you go, Nick.
I was going to say, I think it creates another way to connect with the consumer too, which is, I think, typically a good thing until it's abused. One question that comes up is, will it mean that it had to age in that warehouse from the moment it started aging in warehouses? Could it move from warehouse to warehouse? What do you need to disclose? What will we see on that front if this does actually become a thing? But the consumer connection aspect is what drew people to single barrels. And I think now, as with many things, you'll talk with people, they tend to like rye versus wheat or wheat versus rye, whatever there might be that they have the connection with. This will be one of those things, and it's going to reach a certain number of consumers that care about that, not just those that say, I like what I like because of taste and that's it, but those that want to feel that connection with the brand. They want to know what they're having and details about what they're having. I saw it kind of off topic, but last night we tried the Mexican Cokes, which are made with sugar, this regular sugar, not high fructose corn syrup. And talking with my kids about that, what do you like better? And we didn't have both to try them, but we did some research online. It turned out that in blind taste tests, people like the high fructose corn syrup version better by far. However, when they knew what it was, they liked the sugar version in the glass bottle better by far. So it's interesting that connection people have, kind of knowing what it is going into it. Like Brian was talking about Deatsville. You hear Deatsville, and if you're a bourbon enthusiast, you get excited about that. Sometimes you don't even know why. You get excited. So this is one of those things that I think, and kind of exciting from that aspect, that it's something that hasn't really been explored in depth before. But as enthusiasts, it is something to get excited about.
Yeah, and I also look at this from a few different angles. So first off is, we'll take the Wild Turkey Camp Nelson C that came out right now. The next one they're going to do, like whether it's Camp Nelson B or one of the other things that are out there, it's I look at it and go, can you create a lot of flavor variation that is going to potentially shift the way that consumers think about things? So I'm not going to say that like they've got one dud of a warehouse, but then they go and they just find all the cherry barrels from there and start bringing all the best ones. And they're like, yeah, this is it. Like, this is the warehouse that nobody thinks of anymore. And so now when people go and, they go into a Wild Turkey Russell's Reserve pick, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I heard about this one warehouse. They did a whole offering of it. And then you taste it and you're like, well, it's all right, I guess. So it's like, is there a way that they could try to just shift the consumer perception of a particular warehouse? And maybe I'm just thinking too hard here.
Yeah, it's like, do they do blind taste tests of like, here's our flagship blend versus Camp Nelson blend versus Tyrone blend versus this and that, and you're like, and then you pick the regular blend, but probably they don't do that because that would probably what would happen. But it is exciting and cool from a whiskey consumer geek kind of perspective. I just think like, I don't know. Sometimes these things the story sounds awesome, but then in reality the back end process gets dumbed down, and it's just more of the story than the actual thing, and that's what I always worry about. In these
I
things.
mean, when things are developed in a marketing room, right? That's when they may be successful, but Ryan, I'm right there with you. I hate the marketing that surrounds these brands, and the distillers have less and less say every year. So I think that's why this little sliver of a campaign or a bottling, I think that's why it excites me, is because the origin of it is from us. It's not from, it wasn't defined in a room filled with MBAs. It's a word connected to Frederick Stitzel creating the Rickhouses that are special to us. And it says that, for one, it says our whiskey's not palletized, which, believe it or not, is the thing that we now have to say. Is like, we now have to ask, is your whiskey palletized? And so this little bitty sliver of a single Rickhouse release, it's a step away actually from marketing. Now, does that mean the marketing people will screw it up? Probably. They'll probably take this and be like, well, why don't we do this over here, this here? And they'll probably screw it up. They probably will. But
So you're saying
well-
we need a single pallet release?
oh, for
That's
God's
right.
sake. Oh,
There's nothing wrong with palletized warehouses.
oh.
I think, I think Fred nailed it though, where, we've all heard so many marketing tactics over the years of this or that. And this is one that actually hits home with what we care about. Like, all right, the whiskey enthusiasts and nerds we were all tracking these warehouses way before it was ever a publicized thing. And now major brands and their PR firms are talking about it. So that's kind of fun to me. Like, and it's stuff that actually matters and actually does change the flavor profile. So from that aspect, I feel like it's a win.
I agree. It's it's interesting because like Deatsville, just from people I know, it does produce fantastic whiskey, but it's on, if you ever, probably nobody's really been there, but if you've been there, these warehouses kind of sit on top of kind of rolling hills, and it's very windy and gets full sun, whereas the other Heaven Hill warehouses are kind of more in kind of like a little valley. And so yields at Deatsville are way less than they get at other rickhouses. And two, these rickhouses that, like Heaven Hill's building these 50,000 barrel warehouses, where Deatsville's probably like, I think 25, 30,000. I don't even know if they're that big. I think they're
like,
probably 15, 20,000.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they're less.
And then so
Brian
like,
actually makes me meet him there for a picnic every time I'm in Kentucky. He's like, the sun's
It's
always
great.
shining. It's
The sun,
we'll
that
have
red
the
and white
blanket.
checkered blanket that we set out.
But it's like, does that diminish, like doing this, does it diminish like your other offerings? But maybe it doesn't, probably because we're overthinking and the general consumer doesn't give a shit. You could put distilled in Indiana on Elijah Craig bottle and no one give a shit, but because they wouldn't read it. But that's one thing I would like, does it diminish, the flagships and whatnot? But I guess maybe it doesn't matter.
Now, it should be clarified to anyone listening, Ryan did not say that Heaven Hill is moving production to Indiana.
No. I
He
clearly
did
did
say
not.
that. So we don't need your letters.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
saying, the general populace would not care to look at what warehouse it came from or where it was distilled by or distilled in.
All right,
Just-
so there's a. I want
Just had to give a clarification there, Ryan, for the letters we've been
I
getting.
appreciate it
so
before I get
absolutely.
a lawsuit.
Yeah, we don't need more libel around here.
That's right.
So, question from Justin on the chat here. It says, "How can you keep a quote unquote Rickhouse profile with such variance between levels within the Rickhouse?" And that's a good one because we didn't really discuss about what goes into it. You know, whether you just take 20% from each floor and that becomes the blend, or whether you're sitting there trying to find the different cherry barrels, or you're trying to figure out exactly which ones produce which type of flavor. And I would imagine over the span of doing multiple releases, yeah, you can try to. I mean, it's just like every small batch product. You can try to get it relatively close to the same, but I think you're going to have some small variances. Any other thoughts?
I'd say,
Well,
I
I think
mean, I
that's
think
the
that.
fun. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
Oh, go ahead, Blake.
No, I was gonna say I think that's the fun in it is maybe they just pull, hey, each time we're pulling 10 barrels from each floor that we think are good and ready to go, and that's kind of the fun and you collecting those releases and as you progress you get different small variances. It's all pretty consistent, but you start to taste how that warehouse develops barrels.
I was going to say, I think that then takes it even a deeper angle to that is, here's the representative sample taken from all the floors, but here's Rickhouse H floor 1, and here's floor 3, and here's floor 6. And now you're getting even a deeper dive into what the difference in that Rickhouse is by floor. And you're seeing proof variation, you're seeing a lot of variation that, again, the whiskey diehards are going to be really into. It's just how deep do they go? I think you sample it first with just the general concept, and then as you go deeper and deeper, you're going to lose more and more audience because you are kind of feeding to that, to that smaller and smaller group of niche enthusiasts that are going to be into that.
That's the next product line. It goes from single warehouse to single floor, and then from single floor to single barrel area.
Yeah, we're back at single barrel.
Then we're back
Yeah,
to
we're
single
back to
barrel.
we're back
But
to single barrel.
single barrel,
And,
though, is kind of arbitrary in some regard. I mean, a lot of times you don't know a lot of those details. You just know it's a single barrel, and you're not much beyond that per se. Again, it's just what are people into at any given time, and what's selling, and what are people talking about, and this could kind of kick that off.
I will say the Russells. I thought it was at Camp Nelson, Kenny. The one the single Rickhouse, whatever, was it the Camp
C.
Nelson?
Yeah,
Or C,
correct.
sorry, whatever.
Camp Nelson C.
I did think it was pretty good. Now, we judged it right there, with just that on its own, and it wasn't compared to like other Russell single barrel picks or anything. But I thought it was really good. The question is it worth the $150 extra it is,
No.
or
$300. It was $300.
okay, so $250 more than a Russell's pick. I don't know. Maybe, that's what I worry about is like, okay, they're like looking, how can we squeeze more margin out of this product line? That's one thing that concerns me.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've talked about for a while is like you get but that's the whole difference of just getting an LE versus a single barrel pick. Like, can you get a single barrel pick that does taste better than some limited edition? And it happens from time to time. I know that we did an episode on it.
Yeah. But the general population doesn't care. They just
True.
The collectors will care, right? I mean, they're gonna, and that goes back to Kenny's marketer comment. If the people who want to collect something that is different, they're gonna get this.
yeah.
And put it with the little
it's marketer.
horsey, and then boom.
And boom,
know,
you sell them
boom.
all out. But it's I think it's really going to put the emphasis on blending because you're not going to, believe me, these distilleries, I should say, aren't going to just want to combine some percentage from every floor and you get what you get. They got to work really hard to make sure that it's actually tastes like something special.
Right.
So the blenders are going to have a tough time. They're going to have to take different percentages from different floors. They're not just going to take an equal percentage.
Sure. Yeah. It's funny,
there's
Fred, you said that. I've been collecting all these bottles for a charity for my buddy, and there's some expensive bottles on there. And I asked my son, who's 7, I go, "What?" I got King of Kentucky's, Willet Family Estates, birthday bourbons, Blantons, the whole 9 yards. And I go, "Son, what do you think is the most expensive bottle on this table?" He goes, "The one with the horse." And I was like, "Damn you!"
he figured it out.
We figured it out. So
Yeah, they must have done a lot of market research to figure that one out.
that's right.
Yeah.
They're onto something.
Yep.
So there's one more question that comes from Ben in this, and it's about the whole single workhouse thing, and it's it's a novelty thing here. Is that when you think of heritage distilleries, we talked about Deatsville, we talked about Camp Nelson, talking about these heritage distilleries with these relatively well known warehouses that good picks come out of. Now, could a new distiller do this? Let's say a Bardstown Bourbon Company or somebody that's just been around for 5 or 6 years, and they're going to come out with their own single warehouse, single rickhouse, whichever you want to call it. Would you think that's gimmicky? Do you think that's chasing a fad, or do you think that's like, hey, we can still play in the same box too?
I need to figure out how Bardstown differentiates their warehouses. I still don't even know. Our barrels are there, and I need to figure that out.
It's a bunch of letters.
That's right.
Although they do have the glass walls on some of them. At
I was
Bardstown,
just thinking
which
that
is-
too.
yeah.
Yeah. Which one gets
That's
more
kind of
sun?
interesting. I feel
Yeah.
like you could play that. It probably really depends on the distillery, and if they have all the rickhouses are the same and they're all lined up, that's going to be really hard to do. But if you have one with glass walls, or you have them in different locations, or you're heat cycling one and not another, or different materials, and maybe that's a thing going forward too, where distilleries deliberately, use different building materials for their for the rick houses to get flavor profiles that are different, either to blend something that's consistent or inconsistent. We'll see if it really picks up. That could be more upkick,
like
more uptick on that. Yeah.
The 3 little pigs of bourbon. You got your rickhouse of brick, your rickhouse of straw, right? Just trying to figure out exactly, find all these different flavor profiles.
Yep.
I guess to that point, you had E.H. Taylor do Warehouse C, kind of being the first ones that one never really brought this up until, Turkey kind of did it.
Yep. All right. Well, that's going to kind of that it really all kind of circles back, because as we said, we went from single rickhouse, potentially single floor, single pallet, back to single barrel. And that is just kind of what we're seeing now with the trend of just kind of how we've seen the things have changed over the past probably 6 months to a year. And I believe a few of us made this prediction at the very beginning of this year. And we basically said, 2 or 3 years ago, single barrel picks, they were the hottest things in the market. You could get them. They were sold out within a day. However, the fatigue is starting to set in, and stores are now sitting on end caps that are full of single barrels. Many aren't selling. It's been a huge flood in the market. So now we have to look at this and we say, can we fix this? How do we fix this? Or is this not broken? And did we just now find the inflection point where things are starting to kind of come back to the way that they were originally? And I'm sure that you all have been there at some point too, when stores actually used to have to hand sell their own single barrels. You got to get them to try it. You got to say, hey, this is the one we picked. You want to try it? We got a sample over here. You can bring your own bottle home, where they didn't have to do that 2 years ago. So, like I said, do you think that does this need to be fixed, or is it going to fix itself, or is it just now we started to hit that point?
And kind of to that point, Kenny, I will say years ago, one of the local stores, when you bought one of the limited releases, I think it was Antique Collection at MSRP or close to it, you had to buy, this is here locally, a Willet 8-year store pick for $39.99 cast strength. And I think back on that, and I'm like, they were forcing you to buy that. And it's a fantastic bottle. I still have a little bit, but this is the change. This is how much we've shifted from that point.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's tough because you're coming off the 2020 and 2021, where everybody had a little bit more discretionary income. They were at home, drinking at home a lot more, doing this, and people just pantry bought everything. They would just go and buy, and yeah, and two, single barrel picks were kind of limited to, um, stores that have been doing it for a while, groups that have been doing it for a while, and that was it. But then, uh, all these companies kind of opened up single barrels pretty much to everyone. They're like, well, instead of allocating product to our flagships, we'll just single barrels. We're going to allocate product to single barrels. And then so, New Riff, like say New Riff picks for example, was like, you know, they were they probably had like 100 picks a year. And then probably in 2020, 2021, it probably went to like 500 picks a year, through stores. And so people that used to not have access to these picks suddenly started to get them. And, they didn't need like to go to groups or certain select fews to get them. And so I still think single barrels are these special kind of unicorns. I think there was just so many of them. I think it'll kind of probably self-regulate back to and two, I think just so many people bought so much shit during COVID that they just can't consume anymore. They can't have any more bottles in their house. And it's like how many more, and two, a lot of these single barrels are, the same exact whiskey. It's Ross and Squibb juice, that's like not Ross, just there's a ton of different things. And it's like, how many more Russell's picks do I need? How many more Ross and Squibb picks do I need? How many more, same of this do I need? When I have 5 sitting here in my bar, I need to drink through these things first before I buy one. So I don't know. I'm rambling, but
I
that's
will
kinda my thought.
say, it's brand dependent, right? So, Ryan, you
Sure,
asked the question,
absolutely. Yep.
how
Absolutely.
many Russell's picks can you have? The answer is not enough.
I felt that
the
one
answer.
coming.
That's the answer on that one.
All of them.
But it's Four Roses. Four Roses to me is a really good study, because 15 years ago they were rolling out all the recipes, 2, sometimes 3 barrels deep, and they would have 12 to 15-year-old product. I mean, they had some really old stuff they would taste, and that age got a little younger with the increase of popularity, and the amount of barrels they would roll out for a tasting would become fewer and fewer. And now they're very selective with who picks barrels. So I think that's kind of where the pinch started. And these clubs, these liquor stores were like, well, we can't get a Four Roses barrel. What can I get? And so they end up getting a brand that's just bottling MGP, doing a great job. And then to your point, Ryan, the market starts getting flooded with this stuff. And then there's craft whiskey starting to come on the market. And we all know you could be the biggest supporter of a craft whiskey in the world, which I am. I support those people, but you are not going to win over the mainstream populace with that flavor profile. So when we see this will play itself out, but it's got to be done by the brands. The brands and the retailers have to make sound decisions. You can't just be putting whiskey out on the market that's a single barrel, because that should be your very best representation as a brand. And if you miss on a single barrel with a consumer or a retailer, you're not getting that person back. And so I think that this onus is as much on the distilleries to not be overzealous and put out whiskey that should not be put out, as it is on us being fed up with too many options to pick from.
Yeah, you're right. I think the COVID thing really kind of jammed it up, as well as what Fred said with the different distilleries kind of reeling back on what they're able to do. Don't be wrong, the big distilleries, as we mentioned before here, and plus in the chat, your Heaven Hill, your Four Roses, your Wild Turkey, those are going to sell. Like, there's not even a
Yeah.
problem.
I mistakenly said how many Russell's picks. I just looked at the corner of my eye, I saw Russell's. So that's just the name. But there's, what I mean. So
Yeah.
proceed.
But then, part of this is, they got to say, well, we only have so many barrels. So other people start kind of filling that gap. And that's where a lot of the groups started going. Now, I even look at this of two other heritage distilleries that are out there that still really kind of have a hard time selling through stuff. You see Knob Creek and you see Maker's Picks sitting quite often. And that might be because I don't know whether they're a dime a dozen or what it is, but those are typical picks that still just do not have the same sort of pull. And that is also where you saw other people. So, yeah, even people that want to go in, get their Knob Creek, other people are going to come in and start filling that gap. And that's when you started seeing a lot of this 4 to 6 year Indiana and other kind of smaller players come in and really start finding and filling that niche. Now, I have a feeling that all of this it'll even itself out at some point, because the stores that bought that 4 to 6 year old product, they're not going to go back and buy another one because it took them 6 months or so to sell out of it, or maybe it took them over a year. Whatever it is, they're not going to go back and get another one. So unless you are a brand and trying to figure out exactly and I think that's probably goes back to the brand as well, is that if you're going and you're providing these single barrel picks, well, you've got to be doing something that is going to help drive that to want to get more consumers to pull it off the shelf, because you might sell it's like selling your first bottle. You can sell your first barrel that way. But if you're not creating some sort of engine or momentum around that brand that's going to help drive the product off the shelf, well, the retailers just aren't going to come back from you. And I think you're going to start seeing that dwindle down, and you're going to start seeing these brands kind of pull back on that whole single barrel model, because they're just not getting the sales that were needed. And so now stores are trying to find what's next, and maybe they're just moving to tequila at this point.
I agree with that, and that's a great point. But I think you almost made the point that there isn't fatigue, because if the distilleries bring out something we want, we clamor for it. So the example I'm thinking of to bring up your Beam point is, what if Beam brought Booker's into the private barrel program? They've done one in the history of the brand for UK Hospital for a fundraiser. If they brought that in, people would buy it nonstop. You'd have a line. You'd be doing a lottery to be able to be one of the stores or groups that could do the Bookers. So I think the demand is out there, but I think the fatigue comes in, like you say, from the brands that just really aren't pulling it.
Yeah, you bring a good point. Oh, go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say, but I guess part of that too is and I'm thinking of the retailers especially, this is where it seems most prominent, is either shopping online or in their stores where there's a lot of those single barrel picks. They continue to do them though. And even though they might be around longer than they were at one point, or there's a lot more of them than there were at one point, I think at the same time, they're not necessarily looking to get those picks and sell through them quickly every time. I think sometimes a retailer that's not used to doing them, or maybe is just starting to get into it, is unsure of how they're going to handle that. But I think part of it is just their goal to make their store unique and bring people into the store for something that is unique to that store, that will not be necessarily anywhere else. A lot of stores are just, especially when you go locally, are mirror images of one another in terms of what they have. If their footprint of real estate basically is similar, it's probably going to be a very similar footprint of what they have in stock. And so that's one way they can differentiate themselves. And I don't think they necessarily want that to be, in and out, in and out, in and out. I think they want to have that selection, there, and they know eventually they will sell through that, just like any inventory they hold. So it's interesting that we're looking at it as, is it oversaturated, or is it just to the point of where people want the saturation to be that are in that business? And I'd be curious to hear the opinion of some retailers who are really deep into it, how they really feel. And I think a lot of them I've talked to, just anecdotally, are finding that certain things like the MGP products they're finding the same lag there, but they're getting momentum on other things, and they're trying to kind of suss out what that is. But those that are into it seem willing to take that risk and willing to have the wide array available at any time.
So this is such an interesting conversation now, because we can go in a lot of different directions. And one of the things that we are kind of like walking around but not really saying it is that, bourbon drinkers have a very particular profile. They want particular brands. They want it to fill in the palate a certain way and smell a certain way and all that. And, if you talk to people in the spirits community out of bourbon, people who are versed and other things, they will say that a lot of bourbon drinkers are very closed-minded and that they won't taste outside of their profile. And this could be an example of that. And so if you are a bourbon consumer and drink what you like, absolutely. But if you can't find the bourbon that you want, this is a great opportunity to explore rye. I mean, I've been doing this for 17 years now, and yesterday I found a product that wowed me in a category that I very rarely wowed in a light whiskey. It was a brand I just posted on Instagram. It's called Southern Collective Spirits. It's a light spirits company. They have a light whiskey, and it just knocked my socks off. And so if you can't find the bourbon you want, there's a light whiskey out there. There is a rye out there. Dip your toe into scotch. If you play around in other spirits, I come from a taster perspective, you'll improve your palate. You'll improve your nose. And you may even find yourself gravitating toward different styles of bourbon, which would lighten the bank account a little bit, so you wouldn't have to pay $200 for Blantons if that's what you're doing. But my point
you
is
need to quit
Yeah.
giving people an incentive
Why
to
would you
quit
go to
drinking bourbon.
Scotch?
I'm
Come
not
on.
saying I'm not.
What team
I'm
are
not-
you on?
I'm a team whiskey. Like I'm saying, explore other styles. But I think it's frustrating if you are a one product drinker, and that product is Smoke Wagon, Blanton's, or dare I say Pappy, which I don't know why that would be anybody anymore.
It's an expensive habit.
It's a very expensive habit. I mean, you must be miserable. And
Yeah.
so,
But
try
consumers
rye,
are.
try other stuff. It's okay. It's okay.
It is funny, like, so just for an example, like with our brand, so rye bourbon outsells rye 3-1 without people tasting it. But if you do a tasting, the rye will outsell the bourbon 3-1. you know, just because people come into this and they'll say, I'm not a rye drinker, I don't drink rye. And then they try it and they're like, oh, well, this is something I can get around, but it's funny that, people have very, narrow mindset when they go into stores. But bringing back the Knob Creek picks, they used to fly off the shelf when it was a 14, 15-year-old selection, but then it went back down to like what the flagship is now. And it's like, well, why the hell would I spend more on a single barrel pick when I get the same exact age stated whiskey for, you know, $10 to $15 less or whatever? But, I don't know. That's just my theory. But I don't know. I think people, and two, you just get fatigued by trying to, like, I don't know, get chasing the next thing. And it's sometimes you just want to go and find something you like and that you can get all the time. And that's where I think maybe people are too with that. So I don't know.
I've got also one idea to kind of toss this out before we close down here, and that's if you're a brand and you have lots of brands in your portfolio, your umbrella, and since we're picking on Beam, let's just go ahead and stick with the Knob Creeks here. Now, there is a lot of people in the chat. They're like, why do we not see more Baker's picks? Brian brought up, why don't we do Booker's picks?
I would like Booker's picks. Good suggestion, Brian. I like that.
Okay, I've figured out the answer. You take the same exact barrels, you just bottle them as Bookers, and you just charge the premium. And now all of a sudden, you've created people that are starting to chase after a different brand in your portfolio. And then
'Cause
you're like,
Booker's
well,
is actually younger than Knob Creek. I think.
exactly. And then what you do is you say, we're going to be putting our Knob Creek program on hold. And then a few years later, what do? You bring it back. And then all of a sudden people go crazy because you got Knob Creek pickbacks again.
One thing about Booker's, I used to get invited to they'd bring in writers while they were doing batches, and Fred and some people that worked with Booker would manage it. They take the Booker's releases so seriously because it's such an ode to Booker, and they would bring in writers that used to, unfortunately, many have passed, but they would bring in writers that would tag along with Booker, and so I think Beam will always try to keep it as close to Booker's stories and who he was, because I think that's what Fred and Freddie want. And I doubt we'll ever see a single barrel, but just those are some of the more cool things I've experienced in my career, was getting to witness that and, have a say in some of those things. In fact, I
Those
think they called it
badges.
I think they called it, the one that I was a part of, the Writers Roundtable. Actually, now that the roundtable is copyrighted, we may want to
There's
go
2
after
of 'em.
Beam,
We
Kenny.
can go after him. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that naming those badges was, I mean, I had the same experience with Blanton's. Like 8 years ago, somebody said, "Hey, can you?" Or I don't even know that they were like, "Hey, can you go give me a Bourbon?" I was like, "Hell yeah, they're on the shelf all the time." And I go to the store, and they're like, "No, Blanton's is allocated, and we don't get any." And I'm like, "What? It used to sit on the shelf." The same thing the other day. They're like, "Can you give me a Booker's?" I was like, "Of course I can get you a Booker's." And I go to the store and they're like, "Hell no, those things fly off the shelf." I was like, "What? When did that happen?" I guess it started when they're doing those naming the batches and whatnot. But that's been a game changer for that brand for sure. And it was good before that. It's just funny that people wouldn't buy it until they like kind of made it more exclusive by naming each batch and telling a story about each batch. It's just playing into that marketing story once again.
And I
Anybody?
think
Geniuses.
I think Booker's cut production by, it was like a third or something like that when it happened. That was around the time when they did the price increase. They were going,
that was
I
a
think,
debacle.
yeah, and then they just rolled it out slowly. But I think they cut production down a bit at that time too. At least that was what they announced. But yeah, it's a very smart idea. Just connection to each batch and what people are looking for, and those diehards that have to have every single one.
It's
All right.
fascinating.
Anybody have any closing thoughts before I wrap it up?
Nope, we gotta go see
Actually-
it on History Channel.
Actually,
Yeah, we gotta go watch that. I'm recording it.
I was kind of curious on the single Rickhouse thing. I know, like a kind of bourbon pursuit rating scale. I'm curious what you guys are thinking. Are you thinking this, or this on the concept? I mean, a lot of different ideas thrown around. I mean, where is everybody?
Yeah.
I'm
When
there,
done, if
Fred.
it's done right, like with true intentions, I'm a thumbs up on it. I just hope it doesn't get like diluted down to like just the story.
Oh, it
and
will.
the whiskey doesn't like live up to what we think it's going to.
It's not that about the whiskey. It's whether at the point that everybody does it, everybody follows along. I mean, crap, we got barrels in 4 different states and 20 different Rickhouses. I'm sure we could come up with something, but do people want to chase after it because we came out with a I don't know, a single continent release? It's one of those things that we could
Oh
just
boy,
look
here
at.
we go.
I know we could
Trademark it.
do dumb stuff.
We can do
And
a
it's
zip
just-
code release. Or something.
Area code. But you're
So-
always going to have that, though. I mean, you're always going to have, and that's where we come in. That's where we come in to kind of dissect and talk about what's
Right.
there, and people read about it, and there will be those that are just going off of what's on the label.
I'm excited.
And that's it, and
Yeah.
those that aren't.
I'm
know?
excited about it. I just hope, and the proof will be in the pudding as we, when we start tasting and reviewing. It's like, I'm excited about the concept, and I think it's great. I hope it lives up to what we think it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I will say that historically, the federal government used to watch this kind of stuff very closely, and they would pull brands into DC and they would say, "You're not allowed to use that phrase. You can't use that claim. You have to prove that it's a single Rickhouse or best-selling bourbon or whatever." But when the alcohol industry started having less control, kind of an oversight committee from the government, and they left it up to the industry polices itself. So they don't exactly have anyone looking over their shoulder like they used to. And so right now it's nice, but once the marketing people get a hold of it, you're going to have NDPs coming out with single Rickhouse, and, they won't even really know if it was truly a single Rickhouse. Well, we moved it from 17 different warehouses into one Rickhouse for a month and then proofed it down with water right down the street. So that's why it's really local. That's the fear that Kenny has, that Ryan has, that I have. And we all know is inevitable because it happens with every damn thing in spirits. But for right now, the single Rickhouse is pure and it's beautiful. My God, it would be awesome if it stayed that way.
It's a good way to close it out there. We'll have to come back in a year and we'll see if it's got diluted down. All right. Well, let's go ahead and let's kind of close it out. Fellows, this is a great round table. I would say Blake kind of give us an outro, but Blake is exited already. That's why I didn't hear him for the past 30 minutes. He went and
He's been scanned and put in the cart and sent out.
He's out enjoying his anniversary. I'm
That's
surprised he didn't get yelled at for even joining on for the time he was here. So hats off to his wife for being so nice and kind and letting him spend the anniversary with the friends and people he really wants to be around.
That's right. Celebrate his anniversary with. Yep.
I'm just messing. But Brian, you go ahead.
All right. Thanks, guys. Great episode here. Brian with Sipping Corn and Bourbon Justice. Bourbon Justice. I can't even say that. Find me on all the socials. See you guys next time.
For sure. And Nick.
Hey guys, always fun. Nick with Breaking Bourbon, breakingbourbon.com. Find us at Breaking Bourbon everywhere. And cheers, everybody.
Fantastic. With everybody, make sure you follow all these guys on social media. Also follow Bourbon Pursuit. Leave a review, tell a friend, whatever it is. Spread the good gospel of bourbon. But until next week, we'll see y'all later. Cheers.
Vodka sucks.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.
All right. Now, just make sure that you all hang around until we actually end the broadcast, and then we'll go to the backstage to make sure it all uploads and finally and stuff like that. Because, of course, Blake's didn't finish.
Blake messed that up, right?
Yeah. Well,
So what happens in that case? Do you get the audio or no?
it takes a minute to try to pull it or something like that, but a minute, like an hour or something. It just basically goes and takes whatever it was and cuts it off and tries to upload it. But I don't know.
But you still get it from us, though.
I get it from you all. Yeah,
Yeah.
you all are perfect.
Yeah.
Blake's always the problem child. Even on his other computer that he has, it always says like he has low storage. He was like, I don't know how he keeps messing up.
He runs a special app that's just mess up BCR podcast
every month. He knows run it on once a month.
It's a
He runs that
concerted
app.
effort.
Mm-hmm.
Fred, I'm excited to watch your show, man.
No, thanks. I've been getting a lot of texts this whole time, like people
Good.
sending me
Yeah, I'm
photos.
going to
and
head up
stuff.
and watch it.
Yeah. So
Let's do
I
it.
did History Channel interviewed me last year sometime about Maker's Mark and a bunch of other stuff, and apparently they ran my like minute and a half rant on vodka, and
Oh boy.
and that
Can't
was
wait.
and that came at like the end of they're just like we were wrapping up. And you're like, is there anything else? I was like, yeah, man, I really hate vodka.
I got this one thing to say.
And I can't believe they ran with it. I'm probably gonna get sued.
I like how
Brian,
you have that
amazing.
trademark now
By
too.
who? Come on.
My God, I got that trademark. Yeah,
That's
vodka
right.
sucks. So, love it.
Perfect. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead.
We've been
in the
busy
broadcast.
boys with trademarks, Brian. You got to be proud of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love everybody getting their ring on it.
We're already in the battle.
You're gonna come to a sword fight. Bring a trademark.
That's right.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the broadcast. Everybody can go and watch Fred's thing. So, cheers, everybody that was on the chat. We appreciate everybody jumping in. And this will be released on Thursday. Or wait, is this not coming out till next week? It might be next week because we were doing this, so we didn't have to do it for Derby. That's what it
Oh,
was.
that's right. Derby week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. See y'all
Can't
later.
believe that's here. All right.
Are we hanging up now?
Yeah,
Kevin?
you hang on. I'm in the broadcast.
Called you.